When I looked at the video I made of the base part of this tub design, I realised that the camera angle wasn't very helpful to help you see what I was doing. So I've moved the camera further in, which is a bit difficult because my arm keeps getting in the way. And I've made a second tub in the small size. I've made it without the strips, so it's a plain fabric, which you'll see later, all the same. And I've used silver thread so that it looks pretty. And I've pressed the seams open, but I've also snipped in the edges, not a lot of times and not too close to the edge. I've probably gone a little bit too far, just over halfway. That's about 1.5 centimetres, and snip it about halfway. That does make this job easier. Now I'm going to put the pressed seam to the top dead centre. You can use the marks on the machine, on the hoop, to help you. And I'm going to stitch the next colour, which will just tack that join in place, just a few stitches. And we're working in a clockwise direction, so the needle will come round to the 3 o'clock position now. And here we have that centre position that was marked with the little bit of stitching, which I've emphasised with Sharpie, just so that you can see it clearly and it reminds me what to do with it. And I'm going to just waggle that into position and stitch the next colour. Now the needle will go back to the top dead centre. At no point in this piece of work does the needle go across the middle position, which is really important because there's a lot of stuff here to get in the way. Now you can see that's going round into a curve pretty much by itself, so we've got to pull it like this. Now on the previous video it looks horribly as if my hands are in the way of the needle a lot of the time and being dangerous. I can assure you it's not as dangerous as it looks. If you feel uncomfortable, you can use something like a chopstick, or this is a wooden crochet hook. Please don't use your scissors, because if your needle hits those it will definitely break, and also it won't do your machine any good. So try and persuade that into as neat a curve as you can. And we'll let the next colour stitch, and that will stitch the sides to the base. Now I've just realised that's made a little bit of a mess because it flicked over. I let it carry on flicking over. I'm going to go back to there, and I'm just going to unpick those stitches. Deliberate mistake again, you see. I don't want to take the hoop out of the machine to do this. That's the easiest way to do it. There. So I'll just get my trusty crochet hook and we'll stitch that colour again. You see how easy that was? It only takes a minute. And that's the first quadrant done. Now the needle will come back to the 6 o'clock position, and we've got the other seam, the other pressed seam. So we'll make sure all those edges are sticking out on both sides, and get that pressed seam into position like that. And there it is stitching. Just to tack that 6 o'clock position in place. Now the hoop will move so that the needle goes back to the 3 o'clock position. And we have this fabric to just ease round into a nice curved shape like that. Not difficult at all. Gets a little bit harder when we get round to the left hand side, because the embroidery arm is in the way. This is where I really miss my genome machines, which I found much easier for in the hoop embroidery, but my big genome is packed away at the moment. So here we are. I didn't mark this position. I'll just do it now so that you can see where it is, because it's in white thread. There it is. And we'll get that into place like that. I'll try and flatten that so that you can see. That will stitch across, just across the edge of the wadding, hopefully as near as possible to the previous stitching, the outline for the... Now that's come back to 6 o'clock and we've got this fabric to waggle round, and that's pretty good already. That's more or less done itself. I'm just going to hold these bits down so that I don't have a flap like I did before, which was annoying, and that's stitched round there beautifully. Now that's going to it's going to stay there this time because it saves the journey, but it makes it a tiny bit more difficult because I've got to look round this corner now, but it's positioned itself all quite well. So I'm going to risk just stitching that. With these in the hoop projects that join as you go along, the first joins are a bit scary, but when you get to the last join, you've got 3/4 done, and the last part really hasn't got a lot of choice what happens. And just like on the previous video, it goes back to the 12 o'clock position rather than coming to the centre, so that you don't get this tangle, but you don't need to stitch that colour. So then you need to take it out and stitch that extra seam in the lining, which is here. If you're really averse to sewing and using a sewing machine, you could do that with steamer seam, and I won't tell anybody. And then you just push it the right way round, give it a press, put the lining inside. And what I've done with mine is to cut a circle of card to fit the base and cover that with fabric and push that in, and it holds it all in shape. And there we are. Job's a good one, as we say.